Hi everyone, my name is Renee Grambihler and we are here live at the Biosphere 2. I'm a marine systems manager here at the Biosphere, which means I take care of our ocean and the ecosystem that we're standing in now. So just to start off, while we're letting people sort of roll in, we kind of wanted to ask, does anyone sort of know where we're standing, what ecosystem this is? If anyone wants to sort of respond to that. Yeah, so we are standing here in our mangroves at the Biosphere 2, and again, I'm Renee Grambihler, and I am a Marine Systems Manager at Biosphere 2 in Tucson, Arizona. And so our biosphere is our research under glass. So we have our biomes under glass. And so here, even though we're in Arizona, we are standing in a mangrove ecosystem, which is really amazing. We have our beautiful mangrove forest surrounding us. We have our ocean to my left, which you can't really see, but we'll talk about why that is a little bit later on into the live. But today we are celebrating Mangrove Day, which is amazing. It's World Mangrove Day. And so we're kind of just celebrating how beautiful mangroves are and sort of ways that we can conserve them and keep them around for all of the beautiful ecosystem services that they give us and just how they help people and the rest of the world. So just to reiterate, we are at the Biosphere 2, and again, my name is Renee Grambihler, and I'm a Marine Systems Manager here. So the Biosphere 2 is our biomes under glass, our research lab under glass, and this is our mangrove ecosystem. So here researchers kind of study how mangrove ecosystems work, and when we have our ecosystems under glass and separated from Biosphere 1, which is the outside world, we are able to sort of ramp up conditions to what we would see in perhaps the future with climate change and see how these ecosystems are going to respond so that we can start creating solutions before sort of these massive problems arise. And so just to talk a little bit about mangroves for World Mangrove Day, mangroves are found on the coasts of continents, and they're going to be in tropical and subtropical. So in the United States, we have them a lot in the southeast United States. So think around Florida, Louisiana, that sort of area. And Florida actually does have 3 species of mangroves, and so that's what we'll find in the United States. And that's what we have here in our Biosphere 2 as well. So in nature, mangroves are actually, so they're on the ocean, and we go from the freshwater river into sort of a freshwater marsh into our mangroves, which is a saltwater marsh, and then that goes straight into the ocean. And so in nature, they're all interconnected. But in Biosphere 2, we actually have our mangroves are not connected to our ocean. And so when the researchers in the early 90s that were creating the biosphere were planning to put in the mangroves, they did want to have them connected to the ocean. But they soon realized that when they were building the mangroves and the ocean, that our mangroves are on a little bit larger scale than our ocean is. And so that was messing with our ocean nutrients. And so mangroves are a really amazingly productive environment. Productivity meaning they capture carbon and create all of this life that you see around us here today, all of this green, beautiful foliage. And that increases all of they just have a lot of nutrients running around sort of in the waters and things, and so when that gets out into the ocean, it creates a little bit too much algae for the size of our ocean. Although we do have a beautiful flourishing ocean ecosystem, it's just a little bit too small compared to our mangrove system that we have here. So we did have to separate them, but you can see sort of our separation here with our wave wall, and so that's going to house a lot of the mechanics that make our ocean flow. So it creates a lot of our waves and things like that. So that's fine with us. And so, like I said, mangroves are from coastal areas in the United States. Florida has quite a few mangroves, and actually our mangroves here were originally from Florida. So the original Biospherians went to Florida and they worked with a site that was going to be developed in the north of the Everglades. And they went to Florida and they got a bunch of the mangroves from there, the 3 different species, which are red, black, and white. They brought all of that, the root ball, the soil, the water, and they built up this mangrove ecosystem. So actually, when we first put in the mangroves in the early 90s, they were only 5 feet tall, which is crazy. And so I think we're showing a picture now of what they used to look like when they were put in. So that's what they look like. And for reference, I'm about 5 feet tall, so you can see about how beautiful they've grown in the past 30 years. So many, many more feet tall than they were before. So they're really flourishing here in our biome. And so now we're going to go into my favorite part about mangroves, which is their ecology. And so there are 3 mangrove species, like I said before. There's 3 mangrove species found in the United States. And so that's going to be the red mangrove, the black mangrove, and the white mangrove. Mangroves, and we have all 3 here as well. And mangroves live in brackish water, and that is going to be sort of salty water. So it's not quite as salty as our ocean, but it's not fresh water. So they're kind of that transition zone between fresh water and the ocean. And so here we have our brackish water surrounding us, and so they live in this water that has salt in it, which generally isn't sort of where plants want to live. And so they have created or evolved adaptations to deal with how much salt is in the water, and I'll talk about those in a moment. Our mangroves also the soil that they live in has a low oxygen content, and so they have also created adaptations for that as well. So for our salt issue, they have evolved adaptations to either excrete or exclude the salt. So by excrete, I mean that they take up the salt through their roots, and then they actually excrete it through pores in their leaves. And so you can see a better image of that that we're putting on now. But you can see, like, it's crazy. Like, you don't really see that on any other plants. There's just salt that's coming out of their leaves that they had taken up from the water that they're living in. And so the type of mangrove that's going to do that is the black mangrove. So they're going to take up the salt and then excrete it out of their leaves. Red mangroves and white mangroves are excluders, so they actually block the salt from coming in at all. So you can see here next to me, I have a red mangrove, and there's not really any salt on their leaves. But you can tell that it's a red mangrove because they have these really beautiful, the different mangroves have different root adaptations to deal with their low oxygen content. So mangroves have sort of developed what is called aerial roots, and so they're these roots that sort of come out of the water in different ways and are able to absorb oxygen from the air rather than from the soil that they live in. So red mangroves actually have 2 different kinds of aerial roots, and those are going to be our prop roots that you can see here. So they're kind of propped up on these roots, and you can see all the way back here to all these big prop roots that they're standing on, kind of like stilts. So those aren't really branches, they're actually roots. And then they also have what is called adventitious roots, which are these roots that come out of the branches. You can see here, they're just coming out and dangling down and absorbing all of that lovely oxygen, and so that they're able to perform respiration. And then black mangroves actually don't have any of the prop roots or the adventitious roots, so you can tell that they're a black mangrove by the salt excretion, and also because they have these beautiful pneumatophore roots. So these roots you can see kind of here they run along, actually you can see one of the runners here, they run along the bottom of the mangrove, like the soil area, and then they have these shoots that stick up out of the water here, and they're actually kind of hollow inside, and they act like snorkels, like literally just like snorkels. It's so cool. So that's how you can tell that there's a black mangrove somewhere in this vicinity. It's a little bit harder to tell because the roots do run along farther than the red mangroves. And then we also have little baby mangroves here as well. So this is kind of what they look like as babies, and you can tell that our ecosystem is sort of reproducing and thriving. And so kind of the last thing we wanted to talk about is the services that mangrove ecosystems provide us. It's called ecosystem services. And so the reasons that we want to conserve the mangroves and why they're so important for our world and for the health of our world and our oceans is because they provide these different ecosystem services. So for humans especially, mangroves are able to protect our shorelines, and they form just this massive congregation of roots, and they tangle up, and so soil gets stuck in their root system. And so when waves come from storms like hurricanes, so we're thinking like they live in Florida, so when waves come or wind or anything like that, flooding, they're able to prevent a lot of the damage that comes from storms, which includes like flooding and wind damage and stuff like that. So areas that have more mangroves around them are going to be a lot more protected from these natural disasters than areas that have been developed and don't have mangroves around them. They also act as a filter for our ocean. So we kind of talked before about how there was a little bit too much nutrients for our ocean, but in general, mangroves filter out a lot of the nutrients that come from runoff from land. So either it be from fertilizer, from agriculture, or from other natural sources. The nutrients that come from flow from our rivers on land go through the mangroves, and the mangroves actually just take them up, and they're able to be beautiful and productive like they are now because they have all of those nutrients. And they actually keep those from going into the ocean, where there are other ecosystems like seagrasses and coral reefs that need low nutrient, beautiful, clear waters in order to survive. And so those ecosystems that are beautiful and have a lot of biodiversity and provide so much for us in terms of fishing and tourism are able to thrive because we have mangroves, which is amazing. And then mangroves also, as they're productive, are huge stores of carbon. So they take in CO2 from the atmosphere and they use it to build themselves up, and they store a lot of that carbon in their root systems, and then also in the leaf litter. You can see all of these leaves that are here. All of that is carbon that's now going back into the soil. So we've taken it out of the atmosphere and it's going back into the soil. So there's actually been studies that have come out recently that have found that mangroves store either 3 to 4 times more carbon than our rainforests do, which is another great reason why we need to conserve them and keep them beautiful. And then our last ecosystem service that I'm going to talk about is my favorite, and it is that mangroves are a nursery habitat. And so that basically means that young animals, including fish and invertebrates and different even mammals, will live in the mangroves among these big protective root systems until they are old enough to venture out on their own and find their home that they will have as an adult. And so that is just a really amazing service that they offer for us. So they keep fish safe for us, and then also migratory birds, manatees, the Florida panther and things like that. There's just so much biodiversity that depends on our mangroves. And so we also have some of those animals that I talked about. We actually have a few species of killifish. And so just before we go, I wanted to give you a little treat. And so I have a few of our fish here. And so this is a species of killifish that we have. I'll put them back once we're done. But yeah, so I just kind of wanted to show you sort of the biodiversity that we have going on in our ecosystem as well. All right, and I think that's about what we have for now. We just wanted to let you know that you can find our newsletter and links to follow us and stuff in our stories and our bio on Instagram. And then if you missed part of this live, it will be saved and posted to Instagram and Facebook as well. And then the Biosphere is also open every day from 9 to 4, so you can totally come and visit us and see our beautiful mangroves and see the gorgeous Arizona mountains that we're located in. And I think that's all we have for today. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.